Welcome to part 4 of Virginia's People Sold Downriver.
Before we go any further into this discussion, I want to bring in one of the descendants of a Virginian who was taken to Louisiana, Mr. Yokota Strong. Mr. Strong is a genealogist and the founder and CEO of StrongGen.com. Welcome, Mr. Strong, to our discussion. Dr. Richmond, take it from here.
Welcome back, Alex. We're back here with our fourth installment of our discussion of Sold Downriver, as part of a podcast series for Norfolk State University's Joseph Jenkins Roberts Center and the City of Virginia Beach Department of Cultural Affairs. In our last conversation, Alex, you told us the story of family headed by York and Betsy, who were sold from Surrey County. And you have brought in Mr. Yokota Strong, who is a genealogist and the founder and CEO of StrongGen.com, but is also a descendant of York and Betsy.
Thank you for having me on again, and welcome, Yokota. Yes, York and Betsy were a couple who were an enslaved couple from Surrey County, Virginia, who were originally owned by the Falcon family. Um, in 1826, a man named John Falcon was inheriting the estate of several relatives, which consisted of between 80 and 100 enslaved people on multiple different plantations. Because of the amount of debts associated with the estate, in 1826, John Falcon advertises across the state of Virginia the essentially liquidation sale of all of these people and the lands associated with it. And unfortunately, York and Betsy and their children were in that number. Within months of the sale, the family was transported from Norfolk, Virginia to New Orleans, where within months of being transported to New Orleans, they were put at auction, and the family surprisingly was kept together and bought by the Prudhomme family of Natchitoches Parish, Louisiana, on Cane River, and owners and operators of the Oakland plantation, which I believe then was called Bermuda.
So welcome, Mr. Strong. I'm so glad to have you here with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your story of finding your family history, and how you got connected with Alex and with York and Betsy?
Yes. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me and for the welcome. And Alex, thank you. It's great to be with you again and to be in this conversation. I'm so fortunate to be a part of this story. Um, so, as you know, my name is Dakota Strong. I was born in Bossier City, Louisiana. My mom, Gertha, the late Gertha Davis Strong, was born in Louisiana in Natchitoches Parish. And so was my grandmother, who just turned 110 years old 10 days ago. And so um, I have been interested in my family's history for a very long time because we are a large family. My mom is one of 14 children. My grandmother, Elvira Hilaire Davis, was born on Oakland Plantation along with seven of her siblings. And her family, as far as we knew, stretched back um, to colonial Louisiana before Louisiana was ever a state. And so we had those records, because they were on the same plantation, the same land since the 1700s. But that's on her paternal lineage, and that's all we knew, that we were from Louisiana. Luckily, I had been watching our Black Pro Gen for years on YouTube, and I had posted a comment recently when they resurfaced on that show about my Louisiana roots. And Alex, who I've seen on the show, actually reached out to me on Ancestry. And he mentioned that we have a connection through our genealogy. And I was so excited to connect with him. And lo and behold, through a number of emails and research that he has done today, helped me realize that he was able to help me break through my brick wall, which was my grandmother's great grandmother, Phyllis, who was on Oakland Plantation. Uh, but we never knew exactly where she came from. We suspected that she was not born in Louisiana like the rest of her in-laws and my family. But unfortunately, we just didn't know from like where. Now, one of her children's records did say that it may have been Virginia, but that's all we knew. So when Alex approached me about another line, and then we ended up talking about this line of my family, I was amazed at the depth of research that he was able to bring to me. And so it's super exciting.
Wonderful, thank you. So I understand from previous conversations that you have some other personal connections to Virginia. Can you tell us, what your time in Virginia was like, and how did Virginia feel like home?
Absolutely. So when I left home at age 18 to join the United States Navy as a meteorologist and oceanographer, um, my first duty station was Norfolk, Virginia, and I was stationed on board the USS Mount Whitney. And I remember, there was a time when I was going out to sea, for the first few times, going through the channel there, and just going through that port. I always felt like it was familiar, but I had never really been to Virginia. I'd never really been to Norfolk. Um, and the more that I settled in that state during those years of my life as a young sailor, um, I realized that Virginia felt familiar, but I just didn't, like I said, never really been there. Never had a connection to it, but it just felt familiar to me. And so when I found out the tie to my family's roots to Virginia, it really, really I don't know, I was kind of at a loss for words because it brought me back to the days when I was actually going out to sea, and I felt that connection and I just didn't understand why.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, we'll love to have you come back and visit sometime. And again, now that you have this knowledge about your ancestry and your connection to southeastern Virginia. Um, so talking about place, can you tell us a little bit about the work you've done around Oakland Plantation, and where your ancestors lived and worked for so long?
Absolutely. So, like I said, on my grandmother's side, she was born on the plantation along with her father, Felix Hilaire, and his father, John Hilaire, and his father, John Baptiste Hilaire, and his mother was enslaved by the Prudhomme family since the inception of the plantation in the late 1700s. And my third great grandfather's father, Hilario, was brought to the United States as an African. And so um, somewhere along the lines, he met Jean, my maternal fourth great grandmother, on Oakland Plantation, and that's where my lineage came from. And that's well documented through the Prudhomme family papers. One thing that we never knew was that there was another line of my family's history that Alex brought to us. That we again that was another brick wall, which is it's so amazing that we had no idea that my second great grandmother, Ann Bob, um, we never knew her parents or where we got that surname from. And it wasn't until Alex shared with us some of that research until, now we have a broader understanding of, where our roots came from.
Alex, do you have anything you want to add, or?
Yeah, with one of the unique things about Louisiana and researching enslaved people in Louisiana is that folks here kind of march to a beat of their own drum. The legal system here was very different than the rest of the United States. And that was just because of its colonial roots as a Spanish and French territory. And because of that, it's reflected in some of the names that people carry to this day. And so Yokota mentioned his family last name as Hilaire, which literally derived from their furthest paternal ancestor, whose name was Hilaire or Hilario in the Spanish language. And so those things were adopted well after the Civil War. What we know about that line in particular is that the patriarch of that family died, for quite some time before emancipation. However, his family had been called by that name as a patronymic, for so long, and so that remained their family's surname even after the Civil War. And same with the name like Bob, where in this region of Louisiana, anybody that has this last name Bob, B-O-B-B, that they also are related because they all descend from a man named Robert or Bob Prudhomme. And the way that we discovered that was by accident, in a sense. He was a USCT veteran. Him, along with hundreds of other Black men from that region, joined the United States Colored Troops during the Civil War and the failed Red River Campaign. Unfortunately, Robert, as he enlisted as Robert Phantom, died during that war. And while he had a full family back home at the plantation, he never officially returned. But because his folks, his widow and children applied for his pension, we actually were able to garner a lot of information, a lot of genealogical information that explains all of these connections and histories that otherwise would have been quite locked behind the record. And so we're able to really to find that with Yokota's family, especially with his connection to York and Betsy. He had researched his family in such an impressive detail with the materials that were available. However, there was nothing that really would have proven his connection to York and Betsy, even if I don't even think that they had access to the name York and Betsy by the time that Yokota was researching. But through Soul Down River, when I found them in this database and I saw that they were purchased by the Prudhomes, I felt compelled to document their story and follow them to the present day. And it just so happens that Yokota happens to be their descendant. His great, however many grandmother Phyllis was literally their child that was brought with them from Virginia. And so this is one of these rare cases, one that an entire family, York and Betsy had, I believe, about 7 children who were brought with them, who were put up at auction in New Orleans, and they were put up at auction in Alexandria, Virginia, but also they then were auctioned again in New Orleans, and this family was able to remain intact. And that's something that is not a usual circumstance considering the nature of the family. From the documents that we have, this family had people who were ill. They had people who were pregnant. They had people who were not listed as quote unquote skilled laborers that often are shown as being sold at higher value or, having connections to the family. This was a Black family that was able to remain intact over thousands of miles or hundreds of miles, several transactions, and continued to pass down the names of their family. And so a branch of Yokota's family uses the last name York after the patriarch York. And so, all of these things were uncovered through, a simple hint of following this rare circumstance in our database. However, these people were real people that lived. They were a family that even though their names may not have survived to the present day or their story had not survived to the present day, these were folks who their children cared enough to continue to pass on their names and the children that they had. They continued to remain closely knit together in the area. And so it's just a blessing to be able to have provided that information to Yokota and his many, many cousins that descend from York and Betsy.
That's so wonderful. It's just, Alex and I talk about this a lot, right? That there's so many of these stories that, they're heavy, right? They're hard to bear witness to. And so it's wonderful when we have a few that are kind of they're enslaved, but they manage to stay together and, whatever they whatever skills they put into use to keep their family together, and then to pass down that as much of the family memory as they could in the family name, is really, really beautiful. So Yokota, are you willing to share with us what what it has meant to you to find your ancestors and the impact that has on you and your identity today?
Yes, absolutely. It's been exciting even before I've been a part of, before I became part of this project, um, to know that my family's roots trace back to the beginning of this country in one scenario through the beginning of the state of Louisiana. But to find that my roots on another branch trace back to the early colonial days of Virginia, is really exciting to me. And I think as a military veteran, what really, really stood out to me was when Alex mentioned, that my third great grandfather, Robert Bob Fanor, or as they say in French, Fresno, was actually part of the U.S. Colored Troops. That was super exciting for me. And I took a trip to DC, and actually was able to find his name listed at the USCT Memorial, which was super shocking. Just to know that these records actually do exist and to be able to share that with my family, it really makes us proud because we have relatives that actually served our country, not just recently, but also, centuries ago, right? So I think that that's really profound, and I look forward to learning more about these branches of my family, and also using this as an opportunity to reconnect with our broken branches that we've lost that connection through the slave trade and then also through uh, Reconstruction.
Thank you. So you kind of hinted at this. Is there anything that you're planning to do with the information you found, or what's your next step in your search for your family history?
Yes, I've been socializing some of these artifacts with my family in our family groups that Alex has provided to us. We've brought Alex into our family groups so we could actually have some real-time conversations. And uh, I think the next step for us is really going to be something more tangible, right? Kind of meeting up around this newly found information, location, maybe taking a trip to Surrey County. Really, I think that's going to be important for us to really lay hands on, exactly where were our ancestors living for, decades or even a century prior to even making our way to Louisiana. My family's still processing a lot of this information, but I think being able to see it firsthand, I think is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, it's having been to the land where my family lived for well over 100 years. I know that feeling of like this was ours, even if it's not anymore, is really powerful. And especially for trying to figure out kind of who your family is and how you fit. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right. Well, thank you both for speaking with us today. And I hope our audience has enjoyed hearing this story about the history of slavery and enslaved labor in America that has long focused on the institution itself while leaving out the names, faces, and lives of those who were victimized, hidden behind the veils of silence and erasure. What we really think is amazing about the Soul Down River Project is that the names and lives of actual human beings who were part of the domestic slave trade from Norfolk to New Orleans are being uncovered every day. More importantly, many African Americans whose ancestors were unknown to them are now able to reconnect to a past long obscured and forgotten. This is just the first and most important step towards a reparative genealogy, and it's being done right here at Norfolk State University and in Louisiana too. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Well, thank you, Dr. Richmond. I would like to thank you and all of our guests, Troy Vallows, Alexander Traps Jabala, and Yokota Strong, for participating in our important podcast. Your work is amazing and your stories are absolutely riveting. I look forward to the release of your work. I also want to thank all of you, our listeners, for tuning into our podcast and discussion. And I'd like to end with an insightful statement from Winston Churchill. He said, The farther backward you can look, the farther forward you are likely to see. Stay tuned for our next podcast.